Merry meet, blessed Ostara, blessed Equinox. The first day of spring has come, and it's time to celebrate the transition into the new solar year. So if you haven't done anything yet to celebrate this transition, don't worry, you're in luck, because tonight I'm going to be sharing with you ideas to celebrate Ostara season and the spring equinox. And if you are watching this later, past the equinox, don't worry either, because this is more of a seasonal energy and you have several more weeks to tap into this great transition into the new solar year. So merry meet, I'm Aislin. This is Ask Aislin. Tonight I'm going to be sharing with you several ways that you can celebrate the equinox and Ostara. I'm also going to be giving you a little background about this incredible Sabbath that we are celebrating right now. So welcome. And if you are here live, saying hi to those who are joining us. Leave a heart if you like what you hear. That helps us get this in the feed of more people. Hi, I see Cindy's in the chat. Hi, everybody. And you can leave questions and comments if you're live, and I will be kind of monitoring the chat. I'll answer all the questions at the Q&A as well. Okay, so I'm going to start just by giving a little background about Ostara, and there was actually a question in particular about that, so I'm going to start off by answering that. Now, Ostara is one of 8 seasonal Sabbats that we celebrate in the Wheel of the Year. And this particular Sabbat is a solar Sabbat. And so what that means is it's tied to the sun's movement. In this case, it is the vernal equinox or the spring equinox, and this is the time of equal day and equal light in the waxing half of the year. Now, typically this falls between the 19th and the 22nd of every year. It changes yearly. This particular year, the exact point of the equinox in the northern hemisphere, spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, was about 11 o'clock last night. And I can't remember which time zone that was in, probably Eastern. So that what that means is if you are watching this live, we're actually still literally in the equinox because that energy lasts, of that singular day lasts for 24 hours. But it is a seasonal energy, which means that once we hit that point, it's not like it's just gone after that one day. We transition then into Ostara season, which opens up a time period of several weeks where we're going to be feeling this more aligned energy. And so so one of the questions that was asked was by Colleen, and she said, what is the origin of Ostara? And also, is there a goddess associated with it? So I'm going to start off by answering those questions, and then I'm going to dive in and we're going to talk about the themes of Ostara and spring equinox, as well as ways to celebrate. So yes, there is a goddess associated with it. I will get to that in a moment, but let's talk about where does Ostara come from. So many cultures have celebrated the spring equinox and saw its significance in some way. And so like I mentioned earlier, Ostara is a solar-based holiday, which means it's tied directly to the movement of the sun. Now that's in opposition to, or in contrast, I should say, to some of our other Sabbats like Beltane, for example, which is considered a cross-quarter day and is a agricultural day. So those types of festivals like Beltane, Lunaza, and Samhain, these types of holidays are linked to the planting and growing times in certain cultures. Now, Ostara, though, is directly related to the movement of the sun. Now, the word Ostara refers to a Germanic goddess who is related to the Saxon goddess Eostre, sometimes pronounced Ostre, and the name Ostara is her Teutonic Germanic version. So directly, obviously connected to the name of this holiday, and the holiday itself was named after this goddess. Now, this is likely where the word Easter came from as well. Ostara and Eostre are goddesses of fertility. The name translates to east in some translations, and so that makes a lot of sense. The sun rising in the east. We're at the start of the solar year. This is the rebirth of the solar year. And so some of that's kind of interesting to think about too, because we celebrate the new year on January 1st, but really the solar year begins right now. And so her name was also related to the word dawn in some translations. So again, that idea of rebirth, new beginnings, right? So Ostara had a festival dedicated to her. And here's the very interesting thing is coincidentally, or not coincidentally, and when I was in college, there was a teacher I had. His name was Henry Augustine Tate. He's crossed over since. But he was my art history teacher, and he knew that I was pagan. And so when we would go to um, these field trips to the museum, he would always talk about the paganism in all the paintings and the artwork and everything. And he'd say, I offer this for your consideration. And he'd look right at me. And so he would say things like this too. It's coincidentally, but not coincidentally, the the way that the way that the holiday Ostara that was dedicated to the goddess was calculated was the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. Now, this is the exact same way that Easter is calculated, but the interesting thing is Ostara's festivals are older. So that means that Easter was placed with the same placement in order to coincide with this holiday. So this can be very startling sometimes to Christians who would like to not really believe the connections between their holidays and the pagan ones. But I offer that for your consideration. Is it coincidental, or that they both those holidays are calculated on the same day, or was one moved to align with the other? Now, Ostara is, like I mentioned, a goddess of fertility, and one of my favorite stories about her also has connections to Easter and where Easter, its origins, come from. So in this story, Ostara, the goddess, the beautiful goddess of spring, she would have her festival, her birthday at the spring equinox every year, or calculated near it. And all of the animals of the forest would bring her gifts. And so there's this story of the hare, and he wanted to bring her something, but he was very poor, and he was thinking about, what am I going to bring the goddess? I have to bring a gift that's fitting for a goddess, right? And he looked all around. He couldn't find anything. And at one point, he found an egg sitting in the grass. And he was very hungry. He had no food because he was so poor. And so the egg would have been such a great meal for him. But he realized that this would also be a very great gift to give to the goddess. So he took it home and he painted it up all beautifully. And when the time came at this party where everyone had gathered, he went to present his egg to her shyly, and she was so overcome by his generosity, him giving something of himself that he himself needed, that she took it with such graciousness, and she rewarded him by bringing him into her home. And she tasked him with one thing. And so every year at her celebration, the Ostara Day, he would go and he would travel across the world, and he would bring his beautiful painted eggs to the kids of the world. And so I offer for your consideration how connected that is to the story of the Easter Bunny, right? And so in the story, we see these obvious connections to Easter. In fact, like I said, the word Easter itself is derived from Eostre's name. Now, I don't think it's coincidental that the myth of Jesus also contains a resurrection story and falls at the same time that the pagans were celebrating rebirth and regeneration and resurrection themselves, celebrating the resurrection and the rebirth of the earth and the fertility of the goddess Ostara Eostre. So let's talk about the themes of Ostara and how we would celebrate as modern pagans. So the main themes here are planting, renewal, rebirth, and fertility. And you probably picked that up just from kind of the intro and talking about the origins of the holiday. So what many pagans like to do is to mirror that quickening of the earth. So when we talk about that rebirth, it's like at Imbolc, it's like the seed was under the ground, right? But nobody could see it, and the world is still frozen over. And now, even if you live in a climate where it's still kind of cold, and some of you probably might even have snow still on the ground, there's still a feeling that things have shifted. And if you're here, like where I am, it's a warmer climate in LA, there's an obvious shift. There's an obvious shift kind of when the time shifts, for better or worse. But you also, we can look outside and we can just see that things have changed. There is this quickening of the earth. And so pagans of old and modern pagans like to mirror this energy. And so we might mirror it by setting intentions for the new solar year. We might plant seeds. So you can plant your seeds mentally. So this is all the intentions that you would like to bring forth in the next solar year. But you can also plant your seeds physically. So, and symbolically too, right? So one of, and I'll talk about that as a ritual idea later, but one thing that you can do for Ostara is planting physical seeds, but then infusing them with your intentions. Now, this is also a great time for cleansing and cleaning. And so, spring cleaning, that is something that people just sort of have that feeling like, I want to open up the doors, open up the windows, I want to sweep, I want to like get the house clean, right? Fresh energy out with the old, in with the new. And so what that means too is that when we clean ourselves, either physically or our physical spaces, if we clean ourselves energetically, we open ourselves up for the space of the new year that has arrived. And so we also come to the seasonal energy of Ostara and Spring Equinox from a more purified place. So it's not coincidental that the muggles in the world also talk about spring cleaning, right? But it's not just about the physicality. Like I said, you can do a lot of things like taking an energetic, you could do energetic cleansing, right? So you can cleanse your aura. You can do cleansing in your shower or your bath. Take a ritual shower or a bath. You could do a house blessing, right? It's a great time to bless a house. So spring cleaning of the body, spring cleaning of the house, spring cleaning of the mind, doing some breath work, bringing in some fresh essential oils, a soft floral scents, very good for aligning to this energy. Lavender is very good. I've always loved lilac at this time too. Bringing in fresh flowers into your house as well brings that smell in. And so another theme is also balance. Because this is an equinox, it means that we're at equal day and equal night. And if you kind of track the sunset and the sunrise, which I love to do, is track that. And so you'll see that they're aligned, that one is at PM and one is at AM, but they're just about at the same time. And that is our equal day, equal night. And so what that means, it's not just the physicality of it being equal day, equal night, but it's also a time of balance in all aspects of our lives. So it's a great time, I think, for people to assess the balance. So if you've never done a balance wheel, this is a great time to do it this time. And then I like to do it again at the fall equinox. And so a balance wheel is very simple. You just draw like a circle and then you divide it into like a pie, cut it up little pieces, and then write all the different areas of your life. And so you'll probably have like financial and home and relationships and friendships and self-care and work and children and all the different things that are in your life. And you put one in each pie piece, and then you begin to think about how much time you are devoting to each of those areas. And so what you'll likely find is there's some areas you're devoting more time to, and then there's other areas that you're not devoting much time to at all. And so if we're seeking to achieve balance, we want to really look at that. So if we're spending more time at work and not enough time in self-care, we're going to want to try to balance that out, right? Vice versa, if we're spending too much time in play and not enough time paying our bills, right, or working, then we might be kind of hurting in the financial area. So it's just a great time to do an overall assessment of your life, which sounds mundane and in some ways is, but actually has ramifications for your magical life, because when you're imbalanced, you are not at your best. You're not going to be at your best physically. You're not going to be at your best mentally or emotionally. You're not going to be at your best spiritually, which means that your rituals and your magical workings and everything you're trying to do, it's not that it's not going to work, but you're just not going to have as much energy behind it because you have become imbalanced in some other area. So doing that mundane kind of look at your life can help you in the magical realm as well. Now, it's also a great time for chakra balancing, and I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. We're going to get into some ideas of what you can do to celebrate, but it's a great time to do chakra balancing. And in fact, we have a ritual coming up on Saturday that I will tell you more about at the end, and that is a perfect time. If you want to do some chakra balancing, that will be a perfect place to do it. So let's talk about some Ostara ideas, but first, let me go check the chat. I just want to make sure it doesn't get too ahead of me. So hi, everybody. I see some more people have joined us. So saying hi, Kurt is here, and Carla and Colleen. Merry meet, everybody. Colleen said, I recently read about this. A lot of Christian holidays have pagan origins. Some might say that they were stolen from the pagans. And yes, there is a lot of truth to that. Some are harder to align to Christian holidays, but one like this, Ostara and Easter, you can see very, very similar, right? And so there are theories that when the Christians were going around and they were converting the pagan people, and where one version of where the word pagan even comes from is from paganus, which is the people of the land, basically the people who were not in the cities, and essentially with people who were not Christian, right? And so the Christians found it difficult to convert some of these people because their holidays and their devotions to them, to their gods, and to their traditions were so they held on so tightly to them in order to kind of help with the transition and the conversion. The Christians aligned their holidays to some of the pagan ones, and so this is why we see a lot of connections. And the thing is, the Christians might try to say, well, the pagan holidays came from theirs, but that doesn't make any sense because we know that these pagan holidays were much older than the Christian ones. But very interesting, right? Easter is very much connected to Ostara. Kurt said it is snowing in Ohio today, and that is why I do not live in the Midwest any longer. But I hope it's a beautiful snow, and hopefully it's there. Hopefully you have some warmer days ahead. When I lived in Boston, I remember there was like, I guess I didn't actually live there that year, but maybe the year or two before I moved there was a blizzard on April 1st that people called the April Fool's Blizzard. So yes, it's still snowing in some places. Um, Hi, Misty. Hi, good to see you. And Carla said it's snowing. Snow is coming on Friday in Wisconsin. Yep, just in time for the spring equinox, right? Okay, so let's talk about some possible ritual activities for Ostara spring equinox. And again, I just wanted to mention that it's not a singular date. So if you missed yesterday, technically at 11 p.m., I think it was Eastern time, was the exact date of the alignment of the equinox. This is not just a moment that comes and goes. This is a seasonal energy. So you have several weeks to take advantage of this energy. So here are some things we can do. So possible ritual ideas would be a fertility ritual. Now, sometimes when people hear that word, they think about physical fertility. And yes, this is absolutely a great time for people who are working with physical fertility. Definitely do some rituals now. Great time to do it. But a fertility ritual can be about anything in your life, any intention you have. If you want to be more fertile creatively, if you want to be more fertile financially, this is a time to tap into that energy and do a fertility ritual like that. Now, balancing rituals are also very good. So anything that you can do to balance your energy, so balancing your elements within you, balancing the chakras within you. Like I mentioned earlier, you can even make a ritual out of doing the balancing wheel. So it seems mundane, right? I'm just looking at these like areas of my life and I'm figuring out where I'm in balance and I'm not in balance. But it is you can make a ritual out of it. And in fact, we've done it last Ostara, I think. We did that for our ritual. We just had everybody make a balancing wheel, and then we talked about them, and then we did some chakra balancing. And so it's just a really good, balancing rituals are really good to just kind of flip the switch and just be like, I'm starting fresh. I'm just kind of clearing everything out. I'm balancing everything. I'm calling in that intention, and I'm starting fresh at the beginning of the solar year. Now, another thing that you can do, and I love this idea, and have toyed with the idea of doing it at our public Ostara ritual this year, our spring equinox ritual, but it's a little bit harder to get people to get the materials for this. But I love doing blessing and planting seeds rituals. And so what you do here is you spend a little bit of time thinking about an intention that you have. And then you would want to do some research into that intention and some of the correspondences that surround that intention. And it's specifically what you want to do is find out what plants are connected to that intention. So here's just an example. If somebody wants like let's say they have a financial intention, they want to draw in money or they want to draw in some kind of an abundance mentality, right? Or just abundance in general into their lives, they could plant basil, they could plant mint, There's a lot of different plants they could do, but you could go down, you could get those seeds. And then what you do is you bring them into the ritual space with you. I like to hold the seeds in my hand and just raise some energy and just really think about my intention, even trying to maybe visualize that intention and then imbuing those seeds with that energy. And then when we plant those seeds and we tend to that plant as it begins to grow, it's sympathetic magic. It's growing our intention as well. And you can just knock yourself out with this too. You can get a clay pot and you can decorate it. You can write your intentions on it in the soil. You can put a piece of paper with your intention or a sigil. You could draw sigils across the around the pot. So there's just so much you could do with a ritual like this. So I really, this has always been one of my favorite ways to celebrate equinox and Ostara. And then another idea is just a ritual for hatching ideas. Like this is a time of creativity, right? We're in the waxing part of the year, so it's very much sun energy and brightness and warmth. And so hatching new ideas, you could do a ritual around that, especially if you're somebody who has been struggling with some creativity, you want to draw that creative energy in. You can do a pagan egg hunt, which we have done. I think we did it a couple of times, and so much fun. And so everybody in the coven went to the store and got a set of just the plastic Easter eggs. And then instead of putting candy in them, we put just kind of witchy things. So some people put little bags of herbs, and some people put like a little tea light in there. Some people put a little charm or a stone or a sigil. And you can put so many different things in them and then hide them around the yard. And then everybody in the coven went and gathered as many eggs as we could. And then the funny thing is that we didn't find a few of them, and the kids next door ended up finding them. And much to their surprise, there is not candy in these eggs. There's weird herbs and candles and weird witchy things. But it's a lot of fun, especially if you have kids and you're raising them pagan, or even if you're not raising them pagan, but you just want to have a pagan egg hunt. A lot of fun. Now, another idea you could do in ritual or out of ritual, this is just a craft idea, but you can make a pentacle wreath. And so you can actually make the wreath yourself, and then you would want to make a pentacle inside of it. Or you can go to a place like Michael's and you can get a wreath that's already made. And I like to get the ones that are made out of like branches and twigs, and then take ribbons, and then you make your pentacle inside of it. And then you can hang that on your door or hang it in your home. I have one around here somewhere that I was going to show you guys that I had made a few Ostaras ago. With ribbons, I did all different colored ribbons of the rainbow to also represent kind of the balancing of chakras. So that could be a really fun idea. Painting and dyeing eggs, it isn't just an Easter tradition. It's a tradition like that goes all the way back to celebrating Ostara, as we can see in the story of Ostara and the hare. And then another thing you can do is you can commune with the energy of sunrise, because this holiday in particular is very tied to sunrise. So the wheel of the year and the daily cycles also can align. And so when we're at the very start of the solar wheel, we're like at the start of the day. This is dawn. And so being in dawn, seeing the sunrise, feeling that energy as the day is reborn, is a very powerful way to connect to this holiday. So then, if you would like, you could build an altar. So you can build a temporary altar, you'll set up for Ostara, Spring Equinox, or you could take your permanent altar and you can place things on it that would be connected to the holiday. So some ideas: colored eggs, seeds of any kind, pots of soil, especially if you were going to, maybe you were going to do a seed blessing ritual of some kind. Flowers, love to decorate the altar with flowers at any time, but especially at Spring Equinox Ostara. Images of hares and rabbits, and I wanted to share this with you. I love colored glass. I collect colored glass. I've been doing it since I saw my grandma's collection when I was a little girl. And I found this at Joann's Fabric. It was on like 75% off, and it's just this little like glass hair, and I think you're meant to put like maybe butter in it or something, but I love it just as like an altar decoration and just a way to kind of bring some Ostara and Spring Equinox energy into my altar. So thought I would show you that. Some other ideas, colors. So if you want to bring colors in, especially on the altar cloth, whites and pastels are usually the way to go. Now, another thing that we can do is we can work with different deities that are connected to this time. So there are deity archetypes, and then there are the actual deities. So I'm going to start with the deity archetypes. And deity archetypes are basically categories that the deities and gods and goddesses can fall into. So the ones that are most aligned with Ostara Spring Equinox are the maiden goddess, so maiden goddesses from any pantheon, the agricultural goddess or god from any pantheon, and then typically the solar god. And there are some solar goddesses, but in most cultures, the solar deity is a god. And so then let's talk about a few actual deities that you could work with. So the obvious choice, Eostre Ostara, you can bring in that energy. It's something that our coven has done a lot. Any deities that are connected to spring, so Persephone and Cori. So Cori is the maiden form of Persephone before she was kidnapped. And so you can work with that energy, but you can also work with Demeter or Ceres because that's the mother energy, right? That is connected to Persephone. Apollo, so like sun gods, right? Solar gods, Apollo, Ra, Horus would be a good one. Aries, Mars would be good fire deities to work with. Freya and Frey are also good. If this year's spring equinox ritual, we're working with Iris. Iris is also a goddess of springtime. She's the Greek goddess of rainbows, hope, and renewal. And so we're going to be working with her. Um, so so those are some ideas for you. And like I said, you know, the actual spring equinox happened last night. By the time some of you watch this, it's going to be several days from now. And you don't have to worry. You haven't missed this because we will feel this energy until about mid-April, essentially. And when we get to about mid-April, the energy will start to transition into Beltane. You'll start to feel more like Beltane season then. But this gives you plenty of time to try out one or more of these activities I've suggested or these ritual ideas and just really tap into the energy of the season. So let me tell you a bit about another way you can tap in with our ritual that's coming up, and then I'm going to transition into the Q&A, okay? So if you're here live, put some questions in the chat. I have some questions that were sent to me, and I'll answer also anybody from any that are here live. So our ritual this year is the spring equinox full moon ritual. So we've decided to align it closer to the full moon so we can tap into that energy. Now we're not going to be celebrating directly on the full moon. The full moon is an eclipse this year, so we're going to be working with this energy like 2 days earlier. And so it's a combination of kind of spring equinox, Ostara, and full moon. Now here, what we are going to do is we're going to be making rainbow chakra spell jars. Now this is really a very fun activity, and it's a spell jar that you can use not just for one, it's not just something we're going to make and we're going to put aside. This is something that you can use for the rest of this solar year. And we're going to set intentions that are connected to the different chakras. So you will have this jar made. And at any time when you decide you're ready to work with a specific chakra, you'll go into your jar and you'll be able to, you'll have a jumping off point. Okay, and I'll explain all this for those who come to the ritual. I'll explain all of this. But we would love for you to come. Not only are we doing the rainbow chakra spell jars, but I'm also going to be leading everyone through a chakra balancing meditation. So this will be a great way if you're feeling a bit imbalanced, if you're feeling like, you know, I need to come into alignment, this is going to be the perfect ritual for you. Now, if you are in our Shadow Seekers membership, or you are an initiate or a seeker of Coven of Midnight's Flame, you guys have free tickets to the rituals, to all of our Sabbath rituals. And if you are not a member of either of those groups, then you can get a ticket by donation. Okay, so I'll drop a link afterwards below where you can get your ticket, and you can donate any amount. The system will take as little as $1, and you'll be able to join us. So that is our ritual. Now I'm going to transition into the Q&A. And let's see here. I see Kurt said it will be hot soon enough. Yes, it will be. So we probably should be, we should just enjoy the cooler weather while we can. And then Kurt had mentioned the Oak King. Yeah, so the Oak King is also he rules over the this time of the year. So the Oak King and the Holly King, Oak King and Holly King are usually connected to the solstices because those are the points in the wheel of the year where they battle. But the Oak King is the one who's ruling this part of the year, so many people will choose to call him into their rituals. Um, Okay, so Misty said she'd love to do the jars, but she doesn't have the items to make them. You need a jar and you need paper, and that's all you need. Okay, so I'll be instructing everybody about it, but that's all you need is a jar and paper. So if you can get a jar, it can be any jar. It can be a jar that you just clean out a jar in your refrigerator and it'll work. And you just need some paper, okay? And then what I'll also do is I'm going to give you guys instructions for those who come to this ritual. I'll give you instructions on other things you can add to these jars later. They're going to be kind of like a work in progress. So you don't have to worry about gathering a bunch of stuff for this. We wanted to make this very, very simple. So a jar and paper, and that's all we need. Okay, so put questions in the chat for the Q&A, and I'm going to dive in. Now, I actually have 3 questions from last week that spilled over into this week because there were so many questions last week that I couldn't get to them all. So the first one comes from Melissa, and she said, it's hard to find info on things. And when you do, and I think by things she means like witchcraft kinds of things and metaphysical things. She said, when you do, it seems to conflict with each other and with other information. She said, how do I know what's correct? So this is a problem and an issue. And there's like two sides to this coin. I agree there's a lot of conflicting information out there, and especially for people who are newer to the path, that's super confusing. Now, the internet is a blessing. My grandma, she said before she crossed over, she said the internet. Well, she said the internet was going to be the ruination of the world. But I say the internet is a blessing and a curse. Look at all the wonderful things it's provided us. It provides us with the ability to do this, right? For me to be here live talking to you guys, to see you in the chat, to interact this way. It brings so much information to our fingertips. But on the flip side of it, it also brings a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of pseudo experts out there who claim to be experts, and it's hard to tell what's what. So what I recommend people do, at the end of the day, is to remember that your path is your path. And so you want to begin to carve out your own path. And one way that looks is really developing your intuition. And when you read information, being able to tell if it resonates and it aligns with your path or it doesn't. And so developing your intuition can be one of the greatest things that you can do because it helps you see what to look at and what not to look at. But beyond that, what I recommend is really trying to rely on information from reputable authors. So people who are established, like Christopher Penczak is a great one. You guys know I recommend him all the time. Starhawk is a great one. By the way, Starhawk, she still is teaching classes. And right now she's doing a course on magical activism. And so just Google her and you will find she teaches 1 course a year, and she's a great, great resource. Last year she taught a course on ritual structure, like Rituals 101. So she's great. Raven Grimassi and Scott Cunningham, they've crossed over, but they are great authors, reputable, have a great reputation, and you won't go wrong with any of those books. What I would do is also perhaps look for witches that you look up to who've been on the path for a while. Ask them what their favorite books are, right? And they're going to recommend some books to you. And also, if you have a metaphysical or a witchy store near you, go to the store and ask the people there questions, because they work in this field and they're going to be able, you're going to be able to tell that they're more experts than perhaps just someone that you're reading someone's blog somewhere. Okay, not to say that blogs are bad in any way, but it is harder to tell what is what information is true and what's not true. So that would be my best advice, especially when you're having trouble knowing what information to trust when things are conflicting. Okay, so hope that helps. The next question is from, oh, and Kurt said Lori Cabot. Thank you. That's another good one. Yes, so she's an author. She's great, has a lot of great books. So yeah, so looking for authors that have been around, they're established, would be a great recommendation. And then I just see a few other people have joined. Adams here. Hi, everybody. Okay, so next question is from Nancy, and Nancy's asking about energy work. So she said, how do you approach energy work? So my answer here is that it really does depend on the type of energy work you want to do. You know, like anything, this will be my answer to a lot of things. And in fact, the next person is going to have, I'm going to say kind of a similar thing to them as well. But regularity, the more regularity, the better. It's like anything. So you need to pick a simple practice that is one that you can do on most days. And so, for example, a regular breathwork practice is known and is, to me, is a surefire way to accelerate your spiritual journey. And but when I say that, I don't mean you've tried breath work a bit and okay, that was cool and it relaxed me. I mean like a regular breathwork practice where you're doing it on almost every day. And when people do that, they see major changes in their lives and usually pretty quickly. Breath work is one of the best things that you can do, but it's not the only thing you can do. You just want to find something that you're going to do to move your energy every single day. And that thing needs to be something that is manageable, enjoyable, and feasible. Okay, so if you don't like it, don't do it. Find a different practice. If it's not something that you can do, don't try to do it. Find a different practice. And if it's not feasible, then don't do it because what's going to happen is you're going to fall off the practice eventually. And so we really need to establish something that you really enjoy doing so you can do it daily or almost daily. And sometimes people have this perception that it has to be like this really long thing, like we have to be intensely meditating for an hour at a time or something like that, and you don't. This just needs to be 5 minutes. 5 minutes of regular practice, of a breathwork practice, of an energy practice, 5 minutes of that a day or almost every day is more valuable than 1 hour of meditation once a week. Okay, so I give everybody permission. Just start with 5 minutes and see where that takes you. And I promise you, because this happened to me, is that when you get into it, it somehow opens up more space for you, more time for you. Next thing you know, now you have 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes that you somehow didn't have before, but your energy has shifted and now you do. So this is going to help you in so many ways, physically, emotionally, spiritually, once you set this up. And then if you want to do something more with the energy, so beyond just your personal practice, then you can consider taking a Reiki course or something. Maybe get certified in your Reiki 1. So that would be my best recommendation, though, of how to approach energy work. Now, Sam asked a question that's related, so I put this one next. And this Sam's question is, how do I reconnect with my gifts? I feel like I put them aside for a while, and now I can't get back into it. I know that meditating helps, but I can't even get myself to focus on that. I feel like I'm hibernating. Okay, so you're not alone. I'm sure there's people listening here who are going to relate to this as well. It does sound like you're going through a lull in your practice, and I do want to just normalize this, it is normal. People do have ups and downs. This is cyclical work, so we're not always going to be at our best, and we're not always going to be as tapped in. Now, hands down, though, the best way to connect is through a practice, a daily practice. So that's why I put this question right after Nancy's, is because it's got kind of a similar answer. So you need to establish a daily regular practice, something that's feasible, manageable, and that you enjoy. Breath work, mantra work, kundalini yoga, drawing a card, doing a simple 5 minute meditation, candle gazing, some kind of small daily ritual. That's what it takes, daily or almost daily, and it just needs to be the 5 minutes to start. Now, most of the time when we're at a lull energetically, we will fall out of our practices. Okay, so I'd be surprised if someone who said, I'm feeling unconnected to my gifts and I've fallen away from all that. I'd be surprised that that person was doing the practices, because what happens is when we start to feel disconnected, we pull back more. But that's the time to connect more. So you probably in the beginning, I don't want to use the word force here, because that's so, it's just not aligned with the energy that we want. But you will have to make this intentional. It may not come naturally in the beginning because you're going to have that inclination to pull back. And so what you want to do is when you feel the inclination to pull back, push in. Find something and just do it, okay? And just tell yourself this is going to help me. And if it doesn't feel, you try it. Let's say you try a practice out for a while and it's just not feeling good. Find a different one. But you got to be doing something. And then part of this too is your own cycles. So if this, so like I said, it's normal and natural for us, just like the cycles of the season, we have our lulls too and our low points too. You mentioned feeling like you were hibernating, and it could be just simply the winter. Some people are affected by seasonal affective disorder, and that is changing hormones inside of them and neurotransmitters, and it becomes like a physical thing. So it could mean that we need sunlight, and you'll feel better when the spring comes. But if this goes on for a long time, then, this daily regular practice is going to help pull you out of it. So try that and see how you feel, and I bet you're going to start to feel more connected, and more, and you're going to notice that your gifts are going to amp up too. Okay, so I hope that helps. All right, next question is from Adam. So Adam said, how do you, and he's got it in he put it in the chat here, I see too, and I have it written down. Okay, so I want to answer this now. So Adam said, how do I decide which deity I'm drawn to? I'm drawn to sun and fire. Okay, cool. Okay, so it's a great question, and I'm just going to start by telling you that when I get off of this live, right below this, I'm going to post a link to a video from a while ago. I think it was last June, I did a video on deities, connecting to deities. So I think you're going to find a lot of great information in that video. So I'll drop that in the chat, and then you can check that out when you have time. But I'm going to kind of summarize some of the main points so you can just kind of get started on this now. And I will be doing another episode on deities in the future. That was one of my most popular episodes, so I can tell people are really interested in this question. So different ways to find and work with deities. So one of them is to work with mythology. So what myths are you drawn to? So many people who are raised in Western culture are drawn to the Greek myths, to the Egyptian myths, mostly because these are the ones that we grew up maybe reading about in school. They're accessible to us. But you can dive in and study all different kinds of mythology. And let's see here. Was I going to say it in this question? I'm going to mention this here, but there's another person who has a kind of a similar question next. But there are two really good books that are called The Witch's God and The Witch's Goddess. And this is by Janet. They're both by Janet and Stuart Farrar, Farrar. And those books are incredible resources that any witch would enjoy having. And they go through, like, what is the god, what is the goddess in paganism? And then they go through all different kinds of deities, like ways that you can connect. And there's a whole section on deities, some that you've never even heard of. It's a great resource to have. So The Witch's God and then The Witch's Goddess, two different books, Stuart and Janet Farrar, Farrar. So you can learn more mythology there, but you can also just pick up a book on mythology. I see you put in the chat like Celtic, Greek, that you might be drawn to. And so if you are interested, like you're drawn to the fire element, to the sun energy, find a solar deity to work with, right? Because the next thing I was going to say is the intentions that you have can also guide you towards a deity. So you mentioned sun and fire. So we've got a lot of choices here. Belanos, Lug, Ra. I really like Amaterasu. She's a Japanese goddess of the sun. Most deities of the sun are male, and she is a female deity. Love her. Surya, god of the sun from the Hindu pantheon. We got a lot of choices here. But since you're mentioning Celtic and Greek, you might go with Belanos, or Bel, sometimes called Bel. You might go with Lug, Lugh. That would be another really good one. And then the other idea too is that, so see, I feel like the sun and the fire energy is speaking to you because I also tell people to look around them at synchronicities in their life. And if something, kind of an energy keeps coming up, sometimes that can be a tap on the shoulder from a deity. animals that you see out in the wild a lot, look them up and just see, is there a deity connected to those animals? Because sometimes that can also be a way that a deity communicates with us. Um, so so that would be my best advice, though, is kind of look at the mythology, and especially if there's like one that you're particularly attracted to, let's say like Lug or Belanos or something like that, and you're really attracted to that one, then or Beltane would be another one too, but or Bell. But what I would do is I would start to read as much mythology as I can about these deities, and then start to make the connections. And then after that, I would start to set up an altar. And so it can just be as simple as the top of your bookcase, or if you have a space already for an altar, dedicate a section to it or a full altar to this deity. Leave offerings. Do some research, find out what kinds of offerings these deities like. You can also use your intuition. And then there's just standard offerings like water and honey and wine, flowers. Those are always good offerings. Coins are actually very good offerings for solar deities because of the shape. So that would candles, right? Since you're going to work with solar deities, and just kind of bringing in that fire energy. Now I'm going to go on to the next question is by Ashley, but I think that Adam will also, I mean, this is kind of continuing Adam's question too, because Ashley asked about how do you find out more information about deities, and she was particularly interested in Lucifer, Hecate, and Aphrodite. And so again, mythology helps us see the themes of these deities' lives, and they help us connect those themes to our own lives. And so I recommend that anybody who's looking for information from deities start with the myths first. There's a really interesting book, and I can't remember the author, but the name of the book is called Parallel Myths, and it's a really neat book. So Google it if you're into mythology, because it goes through different myths in cultures, and then it talks about the ones that are parallel, and it's so eye-opening how many cultures have very, very similar myths, have similar creation myths, have just deities of similar natures that have similar stories, and such a great book. And then again, I would mention, or I would recommend The Witch's God and The Witch's Goddess, two separate books. Great books to have in any pagan library. These books are by Janet and Stuart Farrar, Farrar. You can also do a Google search to find more information about deities, because you kind of use your energy to decide whether or not what you're reading is aligned to where you're at. And you can also ask in groups like this one. So if there's a particular deity that you are wanting to work with, so like Ashley had mentioned Lucifer, Hecate, Aphrodite, and then Adam had mentioned like solar deities, fire deities, ask in a group like this. Has anybody worked with Lucifer? Has anybody worked with Hecate? And what do you do? Right? And then you're going to get all these people who are going to give you their experiences and give you some ideas. And then I would also recommend going to local metaphysical shops near you or witchy stores near you and asking there. Ask the owners of the shop or the people who work there. What do you know about this deity? Do you have anything that I like, herbs that are connected to that deity, or stones that you sell, or statuary, or things that are connected to this deity that I could look at? You can also go to pagan festivals if you're lucky enough to have like a Pagan Pride Day, like we have here in LA. Ours is in October. Pagan Pride Day is usually in the fall, and most places it's in like September and October. But if you have one nearby, go there and ask people about that. Or watch for when the psychic fair comes to town. They come to town, like they're almost every week here at different places, hotels and places, and there'll be people there who are not Wiccan or pagan or witches or anything like that, but there will be people who are. And find those booths and talk to them about deities. Like, what do you know about this deity? And you can find some really neat people there, who will share their experiences. But I would just, ask as many, do some research on your own, but ask as many people as you can and find people who have worked with those deities. And that will give you, I'll give you a lot of ideas of what to do. Okay. Oh, Adam said, would coins that I find metal detecting be useful? Yeah, absolutely. Because that is something that you actually found that. And for some reason, the energy, whatever you want to call it, the universe, somebody wanted you to have that. So I think that would be a great, great offering to give, especially to a solar deity. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and I like that you're leaning towards Balanos. Yeah, that's a very good one. A very good time of the year too, because see, we're in kind of that fire time of the year. Beltane is coming in 6 weeks too. That's going to be a good holiday for you. Kurt said he likes Diana and Celine, and also stories about Aradia. Yeah. So many people will get connected through the stories that they've read, and I think that's how I first worked with Aphrodite, and that's how I got connected to her. And then years later, I got connected to Epona. She's a Celtic goddess of horses and fertility and the earth. I got connected to her through a meditation. I just heard her name whispered in my ear, and I didn't even know who she was. And then I got connected to Lakshmi and Ganesha through intentions that I have. So there's different ways that we can come to find these deities, and the deities don't have to all come from the same pantheon. Um, they can be different deities at different points of our lives. Lately, Kuan Yin has been tapping me on the shoulder for years, I think. And there's something not quite right about working with her yet. I feel like her energy is coming in, and eventually she's going to be a major patroness of mine. But I can feel her on the periphery. So just kind of be open to the different ways that things can come in. Adam said he recovered an 1891 Indian head scent that he was wondering and thinking about giving as a thanks. Yeah, I love that idea. Yeah, very good. Okay, so let's see who. I got a couple more here, but you guys can keep them coming in the chat. Next question is from Stephanie. People are going to like this one. She said, how do I open my third eye? She said, it's squinting, but I need to see more. So I think what she means is that it's like opening. She wants it a little bit more open. Okay. So I've got a lot to say about this. So the third eye chakra is obviously the chakra that is connected to our intuition. But what we often don't realize is that our intuition is connected to the lower chakras as well. And so many people who are working with the third eye forget that point. And so they start to do all this kind of work up here, this like elevating work. And then they'll find like it's not working. It's not opening up as much as I'd like to. Maybe they get a little bit, but it's not as much as they want. And it's what I always recommend is that people look at their lower three chakras and really look at what's going on there. So look at your root. Your root is all about grounding. If you're feeling scattered, if you're feeling kind of ungrounded, which can very much be the feeling of a person who's kind of working in these higher energy levels, it will be hard to open up the third eye if our root isn't balanced. And so we got to go all the way down, like to the basement, like to the roots of a tree, and dig in there and work in that area. And what many people will find, they start working on their root, and all of a sudden their intuition opens up, and they're like, well, I wasn't working on my intuition or my third eye. Why is this happening? And the answer to this is an energetic one. And your root and your third eye are connected energetically through the Ida and the Pingala. These are two energy channels in the body. The Ida is feminine and the Pingala is masculine. And these two energy channels, they wrap around our main energy channel called Sushumna. It goes right up through the center of the body. This is where all of our chakras are. And the Ida and the Pingala wrap around it, and they touch in two places. They touch at the root and they touch at the third eye. So when someone works with the root, they're immediately connecting to their third eye too without even knowing it. And so this is why I would tell people the first thing to do is watch your grounding, check it out. What's going on with your root? Are you balanced there? Now, after that, look at your sacral chakra. Your sacral chakra is the one right above the root, a couple inches below the navel. This is your emotions. So if a person has kind of their emotions are kind of unbalanced and they're kind of being swept away and carried away by their emotions, it can be hard to tell what's intuition and what's fear, what's emotional, right? And so if somebody's out of balance with their emotions, I would say work with your sacral chakra, and you may find that your intuition and your third eye increases right there, opens up more. And then the third thing to look at is your solar plexus. So that's right above the sacral chakra, right here, a couple inches above the navel. This is your center of self-belief. So what will happen is that people, in theory, they want to open up their third eye, they want to connect, they want to increase their intuition, but they have this lingering self-doubt. And if we have those doubts, it's going to be very hard for us to progress in our magical studies and in our energy work as far as we want to go. Okay, so if we can work with the solar plexus, we kind of burn away. It's a fire energy here. We burn away that self-doubt and we transform it into self-belief. Balance those lower three chakras, and all of a sudden, all this stuff up here starts to expand. Now, beyond that, then you begin to work with the third eye, and there's some exercises you can do. So look into yogic eye exercises. That is a very good exercise to strengthen the third eye. People who are in Shadow Seekers, who are watching this, we have a video in Shadow Seekers that shows you exactly how to do yogic eye exercises. You can also do Kundalini gazing techniques, so you can Google that as well. I also have a video on the third eye that I'll probably drop in the link in the chat as well, that will go into a little bit more detail about some of this. And then there's also a third eye meditation that I think is great for working with the third eye. And it's kind of an interesting one. You get into sort of a relaxed state and you close your eyes. And so what you do is you inhale. And most of the time when we suspend our breath, we suspend it at the top of the inhale. So you take an inhale in and you hold it. But in this breath, what you're going to do is you're going to take an inhale in and you're going to exhale normally. And at the very bottom of the breath, you're going to hold it there. So you're going to hold it for, like, I like to do it for about 4 or 5 counts. And as you're counting, you're going to focus your eyes, they're closed, but you're going to focus them to the center and right just above your physical eyes, right to where your third eye is. And you're just going to focus your energy there. And I like to say, like, think about you were like going to cross your eyes, or like if you remember those magic eye puzzles and posters from the 80s, it's that mechanism. The mechanism that got it so the picture would come into focus is what you want to do. And so you just kind of focus your eyes up into the center while you're holding your breath for 5 seconds, and then you inhale when you need to, and then you exhale, and then you hold it again, and you count about 5 counts, and then you do that thing again. So you're focusing inward and upward. And what people will notice, they do this for a couple of minutes, the third eye starts to kind of like pulse in front of them, like with their eyes closed, and they'll see it like white, sometimes purple. And this is the indication that you are, or the sign that you're opening that. So great meditation. We actually have a video for that in Shadow Seekers too. So those who are in Shadow Seekers who get interested in the third eye, go check out some of those videos. But you can also, like I said, you can Google yogic eye exercises, Kundalini gazing techniques, and then you can try that meditation I gave. And that should help open the third eye. Okay, next up, let's see, I think I have 2 or 3 more. We'll go quickly through this. Anybody got any more in the chat? Put them in here. I will answer those. Cindy says, does it matter where I get my candles from or my herbs? She said, I plan on expanding my garden to eventually use my own things. But for now, things like candles, do they have to be made with intent, or are mass-produced ones okay? Okay, so good question. Very good question. So candles, conventionally made, are mostly petroleum based, and there are some environmental concerns with those. But that being said, candles are expensive, and so I get a lot of these like prayer candles at CVS, and they're conventionally made, conventionally poured, but they're affordable, especially for someone who's using a lot of candles. Now, if you want a alternative, like without having to make your own, and you want an alternative to like the conventionally made ones, then I would go for a soy-based candle or a beeswax-based candle. Those are good alternatives. And so if you find people who make them, like sometimes like a farmer's market, or you find a metaphysical or witchy store, you're going to find stuff that's not conventionally made there, or maybe you even know people who sell them. Those would be good ideas. Now, here's the thing about the conventionally made candles. This is why I like the prayer candles, is because they're unscented. I think the most worrisome problem with conventional candles is the fragrances. Most are synthetic fragrances, and even when people say that candle is natural, like unless you know like somebody made it with essential oils, like they were at a metaphysical store, or you know the person I have friends who make candles, I know those are essential oils. Most of these fragrances are synthetic, and they're made of phthalates. And phthalates are way more dangerous than people understand. They're hormone disruptors. They are a big problem for people. So, so my biggest thing is like with the candles is conventionally made isn't as bad as long as they are unscented. And then what you can do is then you can scent them yourselves. You can scent the wick with them, or if they're not in a holder like that, if you have like a taper or a votive, you can infuse, you can rub the oil around it. You can wrap them in herbs and do spell work that way. But I would just avoid synthetic fragrances, okay? And by the way, this is just an aside. If you look at products that you're using, like makeup or skincare products, all those things, and you see the word fragrance on them, it's a good indication that may have phthalates. Okay, so you just want to watch for that. Now, the other question about herbs, I think the biggest concern with herbs is mostly whether they're ethically sourced. I mean, another concern would be if you're gonna actually eat them, if you're gonna take them in, you just want to some could have commercial fertilizers on them, and if you're watching that kind of thing, then you just want to watch out for that. But the really biggest concern is really, are they ethically sourced? So Mountain Rose Herbs is a great place to order herbs. All are ethically sourced there. You can also look at your local co-ops, farmer markets, metaphysical shops until you grow your own. So you can absolutely use others. And the candles you buy, they don't have to be set for a special intention. You just kind of want to watch out for things like fragrances and those kinds of things. Okay, but very good question. Next up, Amber said, what exactly is the purpose of shadow work? I think in order to answer that question, just very briefly, the shadow is the unconscious parts of the self that they're kind of in the periphery, they're buried down below the surface. These are things that we were taught early on aren't acceptable in society, but yet they're part of us. And so what we do is we kind of break them off, we push them into the fringes of society. We see them in the fringes of society. We see them in the people who we would consider bad, right? But some of those things are inside of us too. And so what happens is during shadow work, the purpose of shadow work is to uncover those aspects. Because until we uncover them, it's causing us great tension and energy to keep all of that at bay. And to me, that's energy that I'd rather be spending on my spiritual evolution, right? My amplification of my gifts and things like that. And so when we remove that tension, all of a sudden we have all this energy to accelerate our spiritual growth. So what we do in shadow work is we determine the origin of these aspects. Where did they come from? And sometimes we'll find out they're ours. They're pieces of us that we cracked off, but they're ours nevertheless. And so what we do is we reintegrate those back into the self, and it gives us great peace to be able to do this. And then sometimes we find out that those parts of us aren't really even ours. We're just like carrying other people's stuff. And that can come from ancestral trauma, that can come from familial things we've picked up, and that can come from past lives. And so when we find out that there are things that kind of like aren't ours in this incarnation, then we can let go of those. And that's what shadow work allows us to do. But it really, what it does at the end of the day is it brings a lot of peace to people, because there isn't that underlying tension of trying to push away all the negative aspects of ourselves that are in the unconscious. Okay, and then finally, I think I've got one more question here that I didn't want to miss. Here it is. Okay, so Kelly said, what is the best shadow workbook journal? So I got asked this probably a while ago. And so I know that people ask this one a lot, so I'm just going to share a few thoughts on it. I think that there's a lot of books out there right now, and they're not all great. And so that's why it is a good question to ask. The journals lately seem to be a dime a dozen. And I told this the last time that this question was asked. I bought this workbook. This is by Victoria Stevens. It's the Shadow Work Journal and Workbook. And I bought this oh gosh, before I started Shadow Seekers. So it was probably 2 years ago or something. And I think this book is good. I mean, from my perspective, because I studied this all in grad school, and so I'm considered more. I read all the original textbooks. I read Carl Jung's writings, and so this book I think it's a good book for somebody starting out. It gives kind of brief discussions about what shadow work is, and then it goes through a lot of prompts and things. And so that's really what the idea of a workbook is going to be anyway. It's going to kind of take you through some prompts. And so I do think this is a good book. But recently I went on Amazon, and when I bought this book 2 years ago, this was about the only one that was there. And now there's 20 25 or 30 books, and they all have very similar covers, and they have different authors' names on them. And I don't honestly know what's going on, though I suspect it's AI. People are getting AI to write these for them because I know that can be done. And so they're just like self-publishing these books. So I recommend this one. I will never recommend a book I didn't read, but I did read this one. And I think this is, if you're really advanced in shadow work, may not be really great for you, but if you're getting started, this would be a good choice. Now, I don't have a lot of books here because a lot of what I learned came from from grad school, but I do still have this old textbook. This is called Meeting the Shadow, and it's a bunch of essays from some of the leading authors in shadow work, including Carl Jung. So some of these writings go all the way back to early 1900s, and then into more modern times. But really great. You can read some different essays in here. I just opened up Parenting and Your Child's Shadow. This is one of the essays here. Creating the False Self. So there's just a lot of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There's a lot of good stuff in this book. And then another book that I do recommend, and it's not exactly shadow work, but this is The Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft by Christopher Penczak. And there is shadow work, a lot of shadow work in this book. So if you do this book, if you get this book and you work through it, you will be doing some shadow work, but you'll also be connecting to kind of shamanic work as well, which has a similar pathway as shadow work. And so this is a very good book. And what I also wanted to mention is that I am going to be purchasing some books that I've seen on Amazon on shadow work that look like they have some good reviews. I'm going to purchase them and then I'm going to review them. And that way I'll have more books to recommend to people. Because again, I don't like to recommend something I haven't read. Okay, so I hope that helps. So hopefully that at least gets you started. All right, so let me check the chat here. Let's see if there's anything more before we sign off. So Carla said she knows she needs to do root work. Yep, so does a lot of people, right? And Kurt said he took a Reiki course that helped with energy flow. I totally agree. Yeah, anybody who wants to get into energy, it's really a smart idea to at least take the first Reiki course and get your Reiki 1, and you'll learn a lot through that. Kurt also said that Etsy online has a lot of candles, beeswax, or other. Yeah, if you find somebody who's making them, usually these are going to be much more much more safe than just a commercially poured. But again, these are okay. They're just unscented. So Sabrina's here. She says, good evening. Hi, Sabrina. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you guys what's coming up. That way, if anybody has any lingering last minute questions, you can drop them in the chat. So what is coming up? So first what's coming up on Saturday is the Spring Equinox full moon ritual. So for anybody who'd like to join us who's not in Shadow Seekers or Coven of Midnight's Flame, grab your ticket to that. You can get it through any donation amount. The system will take as little as $1. I'll drop the link below. Hope you can join us. And for those who want to come but can't come live, get yourself a ticket because you'll get a replay and you can do it later. On 3/27, I had said I wasn't going to do an episode that day, but I've decided I am going to do one. So I'm going to do the moon phase of your birth. This is going to be a really fun Ask Aislin, and we're going to go through the different moon phases, and you'll learn how you can figure out the moon phase of your birth and then what that says about you. So that's going to be a really fun episode. And then on 4/3, that's the day I'm going to take off. And then on 4/10, I'll be back with an episode on the fire element and working with the fire element. And then I had mentioned this, people have been asking me about this. My birthday is coming up next week on Tuesday. And I have been promising people that I would do a birthday show. So I'm going to play some music from my various bands throughout my life that I've been in, as well as some of my solo music and some of my pagan music too. And so if anybody wants to join me, I think that date is going to be on Friday, April 5th, I think is the date I'm going to do that. And so I'm going to post a Zoom link for anybody who wants to join, and you can come live, and then there will be a replay in the Body Mind Witchcraft group afterwards. Okay, so I hope some of you guys come along, hear the music, and help me celebrate my birthday. All right, so I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to sign off for now, but it was great seeing you guys here for the equinox. And remember, if you haven't celebrated yet, it is not too late to pick out an idea from the video and then let me know how it goes. All right, so I hope you have a great equinox and spring equinox and great Ostara season and a great full moon coming up this weekend. All right, till then, blessed be.